The execution of Francis Townley.
So they actually got it all printed out as well.
Yeah.
Townley.
This was the other person who was executed with him at the same time. And there have been suggestions that perhaps the servant in a rush might have taken the wrong head. So it might not be Francis Townley's head.
We've got to accept it is, haven't
But
we?
yeah, that's all we could. I mean, nowadays, we've always said you could check.
Yeah, DNA.
If you get some DNA from Simon
yeah.
Townley's family,
Yeah.
because they're descended from them.
Yeah.
But, and I thought, no, I don't think that's a good idea, because it would ruin it if it wasn't.
Well, they was trying to disprove things rather than, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
Today, it's
Rather just let him rest in peace and just believe it's him.
Right, we'll go and look in the other chapel now. You'll see up there some more goats.
It's a strange thing to have, but isn't it really?
To have goats as your family.
I don't know any more than that sort of goes.
Right now, this became the Stansfield Chapel, where prayers were said for the souls of the members of the Stansfield family. Now, on the wall there, this is one of the oldest things in the church, is what is obviously a tombstone. Now, originally, I think it was on the floor, under the pews, and when they removed the pews, the seating, they found that, so it was put on the wall. Now, it's been suggested that it might be intended for the tomb of a man called Oliver de Stansfield. Now, the Stansfield lived at Hesant Ford. You know Hesant Ford House,
right, yeah.
where Hesant Ford House is. And they lived there. And Oliver de Stansfield, in the 14th century, I'm trying to think when he died, was it 1360? He at one time was constable of Pontefract Castle. That's another connection, you see, with Pontefract. And it's suggested that it might be his, because it's got a sword on it, which implies that it was a soldier. Now, the font is a new, well, it isn't a new font, it's quite an old font, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's new to this church, because when we go to the other end, there was a disaster, and the font was destroyed, so they had to get a new one. It was originally under the tower. Right, now, this lady here, and I can never remember what she's called. Pardon? Charlotte what? Well, she became Charlotte Townley Parker. She became Charlotte Townley Parker. She married. I did have some letters. Somebody wanted a photograph of it. I think so. Some descendant. Right. It's a lovely memorial, Charlotte Townley Parker.
And she faces her husband.
And yeah. Her husband's got his eye on her, because that memorial at the end, there, in the corner, that's Robert Townley Parker, who was her husband. So he's got his beady eye on her. Now, this is James York Scarlett. who hardly anybody will have heard of him much outside Burnham unless you're in the army. But you will have heard of the charge of the Light Brigade during the Crimea, when half a league onward, etc., as Tennyson said, when the Light Brigade were slaughtered by the Russian cannons. James York Scarlett was in charge of the Heavy Brigade, which was a separate battle. And unfortunately, he had the misfortune to win. He beat the Russians, and so nobody's ever heard of him. If he'd have lost.
Yeah.
It's strange, isn't it? That everybody's heard of the Light Brigade, but they never heard of the Heavy Brigade. So there he is. And he lived for a while at Bank Hall.
Just up the road there.
Just up the road. He married into the local family. He was one of the candidates for being Burnley's first MP, but he was beaten. He was a Tory and Liberals got in. But obviously he was held in great esteem here in Burnley. And that's his memorial. But of course the chancel as well, and I think the lectern are also his memorials. He's buried at Cliviger
Cliviger
St.
churchyard.
James in the churchyard there. You can still see his grave.